Hello and welcome to Dig Down Deep. This is the third episode of this podcast. I'd like to thank all of you for your reviews and suggestions on the previous episodes. This week, we are going to talk about something called the quarter life crisis. My name is Piyush Rana. I'm an aspiring filmmaker, a writer, and currently a podcaster. And you are listening to Dig Down Deep, a podcast where I'll talk about life, arts, entertainment, creativity, and everything that might provoke a thought in your head, and hopefully lead you towards a happy and fulfilling life. Alright, now I'm sure many of you are aware of the term called midlife crisis, which is an identity crisis that people face in their 40s. But since most of the people listening to this podcast are young millennials, therefore I'm going to talk about something similar to the midlife crisis and which is more relevant and relatable to this particular generation. What I'm talking about is called the quarter life crisis. The exact meaning of the quarter life crisis is that it is a crisis which involves anxiety over the direction and quality of a person's life. And it is most commonly experienced when someone is in their early 20s and can stay up till your 30s. Now, I'm going to try to explain this with an example. Suppose you got yourself a Netflix subscription because you wanted to see Dark or Baghi, whatever your taste is, not judging you. And after you are done watching it, you want to see more stuff. You want to explore more shows. But the problem is that there is an infinite number of shows on Netflix, and you don't want to waste your time watching something which is not of your taste. So you ask around for good recommendations from your friends, from reading articles online about it. This similar problem is applicable to the lives of the people of our generation as well, especially when it comes to the topic of our careers. As a generation, we have been raised in the era of internet and technology, and there is a large number of choices in front of us than any generation prior to us when it comes to choosing our career paths. I can work in a startup, or start my own business, or work as a freelancer, or go for the conventional 9 to 5 job. And this is not the end of the choices that technology provides us. It also lets you decide what your priorities are going to be, whether you put security first, or money, or fulfillment, or flexibility. And just like what happened to you in the case of Netflix and the endless choices, the same thing happens to people of our generation. Being surrounded with so many choices and making sure you make the right one, which is the most meaningful and fulfilling, can be an overwhelming and challenging task. Because, like Netflix, you can't cancel the subscription to life and start all over again. This usually happens when you graduate college or are on the verge of graduating and having a transition from the academic world to the real world. This situation in which you have to choose from this vast sea of options and make a right decision leads the person towards an identity crisis, making him question who he really is. What is it that he actually wants to do? Which is usually something unconventional or related to person's passion, because that seems a good way to lead a meaningful life, to do what you like to do. This further kicks in the anxiety and the fear of failure, and the what ifs and buts come in action, which creates this endless loop of finding the correct path and running it through the analysis paralysis, ultimately leading to a crisis in the lives of these people. This crisis may even occur at a further stage in some people's life. When they chose what they wanted to do, they ticked all the boxes according to their needs and priorities at a very early age, and eventually they realize that they are not really fulfilled and there is a void that still remains in their lives. There is one thing that I would like to add. This concept of quarter life crisis is not universally applicable to everyone who is currently in his 20s. There is a high chance that you never faced it in your lives, and you never will. But for those of you who had this problem in identifying themselves, who had a problem in figuring out what they actually want to do with their lives, who still think that they have to find something that is actually fulfilling, I can suggest you some things that might help you go through it. I think a very good approach towards living a fulfilling life and making sure your actions add some sort of meaning in your lives is to prioritize. When you ask a young person what they want to do in life, most of the times he or she will respond in a vague, chill manner. I want to be happy, or I can do anything. There are so many options. Now, that line of thinking is not wrong, but there are two things about life which I'd like to tell you. First is that your time and your energy are non renewable resources. And second is that most of the times you can't have everything. Both of these things, if looked upon in a deeper level, put emphasis on the idea of prioritizing. What adds meaning to your life? Is it money? Great. But probably you lose the privilege of being flexible and having more time for your friends and family. If making a difference and helping the society adds meaning to your life, go for it. But you might not be able to make a lot of money. For every choice you make, there is a trade off. So you need to set up your priorities and be aware about what you want and for how long will you be wanting it. One more thing that stops or scares our generation from doing what they actually want to do is the fear of the social clock. A social clock is a pre plan of where one wants to be in the upcoming future and how tuned that plan is with the society he is living in. If someone wants to take up singing at the age of 23 and he's genuinely good at it, most of the times he might not do it because of the fear of trailing behind in the social clock. The courage to do what he likes and is good at comes at an expense at times. You'll probably have to work for 5 more years and be successful at 35, unlike your friends. But sometimes the fear of missing out grips the person and makes him go for something which is more readily accepted and is more tuned in with the common notion. So, a good approach would be to make your own social clock and implement it according to the priorities that you have chosen. Apart from that, the best advice that anyone can give another person is to just do it. Don't overthink or overanalyze it, especially when once you have started with it. Things take time and regular efforts, and you might not end up where you thought you would eventually, but walking on a path leads up to other paths and opportunities. And if you are just sitting back there analyzing every option and every possibility and not working on it, that won't be fruitful. A person who wants to win the lottery is supposed to buy the ticket, and most of us just wish to make it big without putting in the efforts to buy the ticket. So plan it out. Don't be afraid of all these choices. You know yourself best. Prioritize and start with it, and eventually you'll realize that you are fulfilled without any conscious efforts. And that is the key to happiness. Before ending this episode, I would like to thank all the people who subscribe to this channel without me asking them to do it. That was really wholesome and sweet of you guys. And if you liked this episode and the previous episodes, please subscribe if you already haven't. Because I've got a lot of content lined up for you guys, and it feels great when more and more people like and appreciate your work. So yeah, like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much. On that note, I would like to end this podcast. Thank you everyone for listening to me, and I'm very open to suggestions and your ideas and thoughts on the podcast. You can send in your suggestions on Instagram. My handle is PiyushRana09. And if you would like to read a transcript of this podcast and check out some additional thought-provoking content, you can check it out on my blog or website. Address is runningafternirvana.blogspot.com. Thank you, and looking forward to see you in the next episode.